No more Erasmus programs for Switzerland. Last month's referendum over tighter immigration laws is already affecting Switzerland's access to a number of European education programs. Meanwhile, here in Brussels, Switzerland has become the new darling of anti-EU politicians. They're using the Swiss vote as a way to promote their agenda. Welcome to our brand new studio here at the European Parliament in Brussels. This is Talking Europe. Rebecca Harms, welcome to Talking Europe. You are the co-chair of the group of the Greens. You're from Germany. A lot of Germans either live in Switzerland or commute to Switzerland every day. You'll tell us how they feel about this referendum. Also with us, Paul Rübig, you're from Austria. You're a member of the European Parliament from the centre-right European People's Party. And last but not least, Timothy Kirkhope, nice to have you on our show. You're a British MEP from the European Conservatives and Reformists. You're a former British immigration minister. Rebecca Harms, what do we do now? The beauty of Swiss democracy is that you have referendums on a whole range of issues, including immigration. I remind our viewers that Switzerland is not a member of the European Union, but the country signed a series of bilateral agreements with the bloc. Now, after Swiss voters narrowly backed the referendum proposal to bring back strict quotas for immigration from the EU, well, EU leaders are telling the Swiss now we need to renegotiate everything.
Yeah, astonishingly, the voters in Switzerland decided against free movement, but obviously did not intend in the same day to decide against the bilateral treaties, which matter a lot for them. And also what I found astonishing was that the voters who voted against free movement in Switzerland were not informed that there is a clear interconnection in between the free movement and the rest of the treaties with the EU. So Swiss democracy is a complicated thing. They have to work now on the consequences on this vote, but consequences are there not only to be taken in Geneva or in Bern, but also in Brussels, in the EU.
Timothy Kirkhope, your party, the Conservative Party, is willing to repatriate some powers from Brussels to Britain. Do you welcome the Swiss vote?
No, I don't welcome the Swiss vote because, of course, I also believe in the single market. My party believes in that very strongly, and we believe, therefore, that the free movement provisions, people to work and to go to education and so on around Europe, is very, very much an integral part of that. But, of course, we've got to understand Switzerland is not a member of the EU. Switzerland has a history of referenda, as I think you said in your opening remarks, including about things like whether you put a bicycle pump on a bicycle or not, whether you can, a member of the army, keep a gun at home when you're off duty and things like that. These are very specific things. I think the Swiss people probably were not fully aware of all these bilaterals.
You're telling us they made a mistake?
I'm not saying, I wouldn't dream of saying that the Swiss make mistakes, but it's up to them what they do.
Make mistakes.
Well, they may make some mistakes, but I'm not going to suggest they did in this case. All I'm suggesting is it is just possible that they were not fully aware of all the other bilateral agreements that have been carefully entered into between the EU and Switzerland over a number of years. We have been involved in them ourselves. I'm rather worried that perhaps the Swiss have not quite realised what it was that they decided.
You mentioned concrete implications. We're starting to see what these implications will be. There's talk of some restrictions on Erasmus programs. There's also Horizon 2020. Tell us specifically, what is this all about?
At least we have 120 contracts with the Swiss. A lot of them were approved by the Swiss people. So the key question is, how can we develop? We have three opportunities how we could go on. The first one is that the restrictions that they want to have for people who come to Switzerland we could apply the same restrictions to the 500,000 Swiss who are working within European Union. And of course we could target one canton which we treat like they treat now Croatia. So I think the understanding is that if we go into this lose-lose game, that is not in benefit of European Union and not for Switzerland.
So you want to reach out to the Swiss authorities. What can Europe offer? How can Europe find a new arrangement with the Swiss?
So I think we have these three opportunities. The one is that we do reciprocity, that also we restrict Swiss people going to European Union. The second one is that we negotiate a Swiss Plus treaty. Swiss Plus means the existing one plus an interinstitutional agreement, that we create an institution between European Union and Switzerland to see how we can make the treaties which we have together lasting for long time and at least forever. The third option is that we negotiate with Swiss government a full membership of European Union, that we go through the 35 chapters, and at least after 3 years, Swiss people can make a decision about the three options. I think it's very important to start a new debate how the Swiss democracy, how Swiss politicians can be part of the European Union decision making.
What's the timeline now? What's going to happen?
After all those votes in Switzerland by the citizens, it takes some time to implement. I think there's something like a 3 years horizon to act based on the decision. And I'm trying to follow the discussion in Switzerland. I love the country. I'm there every summer. I have close friends. And I find it very interesting that they debate now in a very tough way the question whether to become real members of the European Union is the better choice in this situation. And I think it's the better way, how Paul Rübig described in his second part.
But the mood in Switzerland these days is not really about joining the European Union.
No, but so they cannot open negotiations by the government with Europe without a vote before. Yes. So this requires a vote. And let the people discuss. I think there is there's really the necessity of discussion in Switzerland, because they cannot expect a situation of cherry picking towards the European Union.
An a la carte settlement, as we often hear.
The hidden problem, maybe this helps you even, colleague. So the hidden problem behind the vote is not the free movement in between Switzerland, Germany, France, Italy, etc. The real problem behind is that in these days of crisis, of economic crisis, there are growing fears towards everything what is a little bit strange. And on this we have to work.
Okay. Yeah, but hang on. Look, the situation regarding Switzerland is they are not members of the EU. To some extent, therefore, they can cherry pick. But they have been joining quite a lot of things, protocols of various kinds. But they had a very full debate in Switzerland about the question of full membership of the EU. They had this debate on a number of occasions, and they have always settled it on the basis of retaining their independence, their Swissness, as it were. They did not want to become members, full members of the EU. But they have been able to sign up to a lot of things. The difficulty we've got is there's a complete interconnection between quite a lot of the things that they've signed up to, which have benefited Switzerland, but also, of course, benefited the other EU countries as well. How they deal with this, it has to be dealt with calmly. It has to be dealt with without too much recrimination from an EU perspective. I think, though, that we have to simply remind them of the facts. We have to discuss carefully with them how we go forward and how we maintain the relationship we have with the Swiss in a friendly way, in a positive way.
It's a key question which we should have an answer from the Swiss people is, did they really want to make this guillotine clause that it will be that it have to be happened? I think it's now necessary to have a second referendum where they say, okay, the one question is the quota, and the other question is should the existing situation be prolonged, or what are new alternatives? And the new alternative could be that the referendum asks if Swiss people really want to break the deal.
But it's also the question whether they really expect that free movement can exist in one direction, so for the Switzerland people in one direction, for their goods, their financial
products. You can't deny that
so
the message, though, is quite powerful. And it's not only the Swiss who, you said because of globalization, the economic crisis, the idea of free movement, Europe without borders, is becoming less popular in some countries.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, if you say about some countries, my own country, for instance, very much supports free movement for the purposes of work and education and so on. Well, it certainly does. I think that the issues, and it affects not only Britain, but a lot of other countries too, the issues regarding the internal domestic arrangements for benefits of one kind or another are matters of some difference between countries and some matters of concern. Certainly, I think that we do need to retain some competence over those issues, and I don't think it interferes with the general principle of free movement, which of course is very important for the internal market. So there are these things, but again, the inflexibility of Europe sometimes is a problem. If we're going to be inflexible towards the Swiss in this situation they find themselves in right now, and if that inflexibility is also going to be spread out in other countries, whether it's Britain, France, or any other country, that happens to want to have some control still in internal matters of pensions and benefits, then I think that is very dangerous. It's bad for Europe, and I don't think it's really something we should be doing.
Mr. Rübig, do you think that the Swiss vote will embolden Eurosceptic parties in the coming European elections?
No, I don't think so, because we accept whatever the Swiss will decide. And I think people now learned that if you break with the European Union from one side, that you have a lot of problems. And I think the opinion polls shows us that now 60% of the Swiss people think it was the wrong decision. So the opinion poll have a very clear say that if a new referendum on the question, if to break the deal with the European Union, I think we Swiss people don't like to have the break of the deal.
You think it will actually work against anti-EU parties because European citizens will think twice, or will have no effect?
So I think in Switzerland we will see what's going to happen. There can be surprises because so politicians sometimes make decisions and a year later you cannot understand why. And in Switzerland, obviously, people decided, and then soon after they don't understand why they decided in this way.
Trying to make comparisons here that give comfort to the total separatist parties and so on would, I think, be completely wrong. It doesn't work like that. You can't transmit it to say because Switzerland is doing this proves that being outside of the European Union is a good thing. I mean, in many ways, it argues the other side of it, really, that being in the EU is quite important. It's important for Switzerland, and in the right terms, it must be important for other countries too.
It's time to welcome our partner on Talking Europe, Tim King from European Voice. Mr. Rübig, I know you need to catch a plane, so I'll let you go. I don't want you to miss your plane. Thank you very much for talking to us. Now, Tim, you're joining us. As I said, you're the editor of European Voice, a newspaper that provides independent insight into the Brussels Beltway. You cover a whole range of EU stories, and Switzerland is obviously one of them.
Yes, and it's a conundrum for us really, because Switzerland is that perpetual exception lurking in the middle of the European Union as an example to us of what the others are not. And the question really for me over the longer term is it possible for Switzerland in all its peculiarities to persist as the European Union expands and grows around it? And one of the issues that I don't think you've paid sufficient attention to so far is the destruction in some way of an ancient Swiss belief, which is banking secrecy, by court cases in the United States. And in some ways, Swiss banking secrecy has crumbled overnight. And Mr. Rübig's gone now, so I can't ask him about Austrian banking secrecy. But there were other ways in which the European Union was trying to dismantle banking secrecy. But some of the distinctive features of Swiss identity, one of them is direct democracy, which has produced this referendum. referendum, one of which is the sort of militia army that you refer to, keeping arms in the hallway along with your umbrella and your walking stick, and so on. Those distinctive features of Swiss identity. And the interesting question for me is whether those can continue.
Yes.
I mean, I think actually, can I just react in a way? Because I agree that there is something very peculiar about Switzerland. I don't mean that rudely, I mean in a very positive way, really. It is an unusual sort of situation where they have tried their best to get the best of the wider world, but at the same time maintain their own particular standards and historic sort of traditions. It doesn't prove very much to people who want to make an equivalence with Switzerland. Anybody said, I'd like to be like Switzerland. Britain, can't be like Switzerland. Well, Germany can't be like Switzerland. None of us can be. But the truth of the matter is that isn't it fair enough that in this world we live in, that we have got countries like Switzerland that actually can maintain these sort of traditions?
Nobody is doubting this, that they can do it. They can continue to do it, but I doubt that there is this Switzerland. Yeah. So for me, Switzerland is also a country with many different identities. Die Deutsche Schweiz is very different from Ticino.
German-speaking
Rätoromanische Ecke is very different from the French part. And you can see the votes. The votes on the issue have been very different in the different regions.
20% of residents, I believe, are of foreign origin. So it's also an increasingly diverse population, multi-ethnic.
Yeah.
Well, as we got it, Switzerland will always be Switzerland. Thank you very much for talking to us, Rebecca Harms, Mr. Kirkhope, Tim King. Now, please stay with me. I'll return just after the news break in about 10 minutes for the second part of Talking Europe.